your fist do the talking.
お前の力を見せてみろ。
逃げるなら今のうちだよ。
Ready? Fight!
Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Rookie's Field Training Guide to Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Now, back in the first video, I covered the basics of movement, defense, the basics of the control layout. I mean, if you want to go into details, you can always just, follow the links and go back to watch the first one. But as I'm sure everyone who's at least getting into playing Marvel for the first time or even the second time has done by this point, I'm pretty sure you've probably hit the pause button and taken a look at the command list. Now, of course, on the command list, you're going to see, a listing of all of the different super and hyper arts that your chosen character will have. That right there is pretty much going to lead us into this next topic of discussion for the Rookie's Field Training Guide. Welcome to Round 2, Special Moves. Now, there are a lot of things in this game that actually set each character apart from each other. But if there's one thing that's almost as obvious as the characters themselves, how they look and how they move, it's their special moves. Signature attacks that are pretty much, well, not pretty much, signature attacks that are unique to every character on the roster. And what adds another layer to this is that no matter which button you use, for most of the attacks, there are usually versions done with the light attack, the medium attack, and the heavy attack. And each version, believe it or not, actually has its own uses aside from just, having a difference in speed or in damage. Now let me get Ryu back over here onto the one-player side, because the command list, when you look it up, it will once again assume that your character is on the first player side, facing to the right of the screen. Now, if you haven't really gotten much into fighting games, then I'm not sure how I'm going to explain this to you, but I'll try the best I can. For those of you that do play fighting games, or at least have some sort of hobbyist knowledge thereof, you know that the guy on the screen, Ryu, is amongst the most iconic fighting game characters in the history of the genre. As it is, so is his listing of attacks. You have the basics of the basics, the Hadouken. In order to perform the move, it's a relatively simple maneuver once you get used to it. You move from down to forward on the D-pad or on the joystick. It's a basic sort of quarter circle sweeping motion of your thumb, or of the stick itself. If you do the motion fluidly, and you follow that up with hitting one of the attack buttons, the results are as follows. Now, as you've just seen right there, I've done the classic Hadouken with all three of the attack buttons. It'll probably be a little bit easier for me to show you the difference in speed if I actually take to the air to do it. Yes, this is one of his moves that can also be done in mid-air, but only has a mid-air variant available for the Versus series, for the Marvel Versus games. So, in the air, like I said, it'll be a little bit easier to see the difference in speed. With light attack, it comes out, it travels kind of slow. Medium attack, it actually travels a little bit faster. And of course with heavy attack, it travels the fastest. Now, let me actually do a super jump so I can show you will give you a little bit of a better demonstration as far as the difference between them.
Hadouken! 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 Hadouken!
Okay, I guess it's not really that much of a speed demonstration, is it? But you get what I'm saying, though. For any characters where the listing is just the motion, the command, plus attack, for any characters whose listings are like that, you can use any of the 3 attack buttons, and it usually comes with, a difference in, again, speed or in damage done. Let's bring in Spider-Man, see if I can actually show you a better difference as far as speed. Same basic motion for his projectile for his web ball shot. Quarter circle forward, so sweep the D-pad from down to forward, and hit light, medium, or heavy attack. There's the light. Travels kind of slowish. There we go. Medium attack has a noticeable difference in speed, but it's not too fast. Whereas with heavy attack, there you have it. You've got that high speed projectile. I want to go ahead and switch back to you so that way I can cover the rest of his special moves. But you'll understand what I'm talking about once I finish this. This isn't going to be Ryu specific. Not yet. Now, his signature Hurricane Kick. This time you'll be sweeping the controller from down to back, or down and to the left if you're on the one-player side. And again, using any of the attack buttons to pull it off. So if you use light attack, it's only 1 spin, 1 kick, and it travels a short distance. Medium attack, 2 spins, 2 kicks, a little bit further on the distance. Heavy attack, greater distance, more revolutions. Now, the reason I'm going about it this way as far as explaining special moves to you guys is that if you actually decide to go through the mission mode that comes with this game, Stupid phone, shut up. It'll teach you how to do combos, and for the listing to actually pull off the combo, it'll list what special move that you need to do, and it'll have an L or an M or an H, meaning you have to use, in particular, light, medium, or heavy. But the mission mode only shows you that it works. It doesn't show you why. And the reason why is that each special move, if you can pull it off with any of the attack buttons, it generally means that there is going to be some property in that move that isn't available with the other strengths of that attack. But I think I might be getting into the weeds, or I think I might be getting into the more advanced stuff, where what I'm really trying to do is just hook you up with the basics. Speaking of hooking you up with the basics, let's go for the next special move, the Shoryuken, the Dragon Punch, the classic anti-air attack. Now, it's listed in the commands as forward, down, and then diagonal forward with any of the attack buttons. Thus, see there how I messed up on that second one, on the medium one? That's because it can be a little bit tricky, even for someone trying to learn the commands the first time. But, an easy way to, kind of an easy shortcut to help you actually perform the move properly without accidentally triggering something else, is to remember that the motion for Dragon Punches is basically like a Z motion on the joystick or on the controller. So if you basically go forward and then complete the Z, basically complete the Z motion with your thumb, and then as soon as you do that last zigzag, hit the attack, you can get it almost every time. So there's your 3 basic types of special attacks. You have quarter circle forward, quarter circle backward, and Z motion, either going forward, or in this case, Ryu also has one going backward. Now, some other characters in this game, mainly, I think the only character that does have this particular type of move is Shuma Gorath, who is one of the DLC characters. Some characters actually have moves where you need to charge the direction. Charging basically means holding a certain direction for like between 1.5 to 3 seconds depending on the game or depending on the system. In other words, if you've used characters like Guile in Street Fighter, that's basically how you do his Sonic Boom or his Flash Kick. You charge in a direction, then move to the opposite direction and hit the attack button. But anyway, there are also a few other sets of special moves that each character has that can actually be done with the special button. This is where I'm going to hand it over to Hagar. Now, there are some characters where if you hit 2 of the buttons at the same time, like, well, basically if you hit any of the attack buttons plus the special button plus the launcher button, it'll actually do one of their signature attacks. With Hagar, his signature attack, let's get Shinka over here to a more visible area of the screen. His signature attack is the ever-present Lariat. Now this is one of those attacks where no matter which of the attack buttons you use, if you press light, medium, or heavy in addition to special, it'll do the same attack, and that attack has the same properties. Now for some characters, it can be seen as purely offensive. For characters like, say, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, the attack plus special command would actually wind up being a little bit more, I guess, defensive, if not suited more for mobility. So some characters, again, have that offensive, that lariat. Some characters like Spider-Man can actually use their webs to zip at more awkward angles as compared to his dashing, or upward angles. And believe it or not, excuse me, believe it or not, with characters that have mobility type commands like this, you actually can do a very small amount of damage, but it's useful more for perhaps interrupting an opponent's offense, or again, just for closing the gap, getting yourself closer, or in some cases even getting yourself away. And of course, seeing as how this is a versus game, when you've got special moves, you have hyper moves that follow it up. Each character has at least one hyper move that uses up one level of the super gauge, which you'll find at the bottom of the screen. And for most characters, hyper moves are usually like modifications or extensions on any of their previous special moves. For example, where you have Ryu's Hadoken, you also have his hyper, the Shinku Hadoken. Now, note that this one only did 25 hits. Oh, I should also tell you the command, of course. The command for most hyper arts, if not all of them, is to do one of the controller motions, either quarter circle or Z motion, and use 2 or all 3 of the attack buttons. The default button for that is going to be R2, or the right trigger on the Xbox 360. Now again, quarter circle forward with one of the attacks, Hadoken. 3 buttons, Shinku Hadoken. Now, as I was going to mention earlier, notice that that beam only did 25 hits. But if you start actually rapidly pressing more of the buttons afterward, or mashing the buttons as it were, it'll actually double the hit count. Or come pretty close to it. You get the idea. Now, most characters in the game have more than just one hyper art. So, for example, Ryu not only has a supercharged Hadoken, which can also be performed in midair, but he also has a supercharged Hurricane Kick as well. Shinku Tatsumaki. Quarter circle back, all three of the attack buttons. Mash the buttons after the attack starts, and you get extra hits and extra damage. Now there are also a good number of characters here that actually have a level 3 hyper art. With Ryu, his is actually the Dragon Punch variant. So you do the zigzag, the forward down forward, the Shoryuken motion, and hit all 3 attack buttons, and if you have 3 levels built up in the super gauge, if the gauge at the bottom reads 3, 4, or 5, you can do this. Now, as is noted, well, not as is noted, but as you've seen, not only are level 3 hyper arts generally more cinematic, but they do considerably more damage than any one special move by itself. And they actually tend to do considerably more damage than any one hyper art by itself. Take a look at the damage totals up near the upper right, and you'll notice that Shinku Hadoken right there only did 280,000 points of damage. Whereas the Shin Shoryuken, used level 3, will do 380,000 points of damage. But instead of measuring damage by numbers, just, look at how large the chunks of health were taken off after each attack. Now, just as how each special attack is unique, not only with the characters that they use them, but in their properties, it's the same with the super arts and the same with the hyper arts. Those are actually details that I would actually like to go into once I start doing some of the more character-specific Riki training guides, which will be coming later on. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and reset the scene back to the default starting point and the default damage totals, so I can actually go into a little bit more of the basics of comboing. Now, if you've taken enough time to actually practice your basic chain combos from the last episode, I am here to inform you, Marvel beginners, that you can actually add special moves to the end, or sometimes even to the middle of combos, in order to not only increase your damage, but also to set up various situations to, get your opponent where you want them in order to do even more, to continue your assault. Let's take, for example, once again, our ordinary guy, Ryu. Now, if you go, say, you could go from a normal attack into one of his specials, like, say, use his light attack, and you can go from that into his Hadoken, which is basically just doing the command really quickly after landing that first attack. It takes a little bit of practice to get used to, but it's relatively easy to put off. Relatively easy to pull off. So if you go 1, 2, 2-hit combo that included a special attack. Light attack to Hadoken. And with combos like that, pretty much any strength of projectile, any strength of special will actually connect. And it's pretty much the same with any special in the game. You can always link at least one normal attack into one special. Like so. 2 hits, combo connects. 3 hits for, you know, the higher strength hurricane kicks. And if you're fast enough on the joystick, you can even link to the Shoryuken as well. Most folk would call this basic stuff, but it's the fundamentals. And no matter where you're playing, you could be on the grandest tournament stage of all. You could be at any of the Evolution tournaments. You could be at any of the regionals. You could be sitting on the couch with a bunch of your friends playing this. But there is always going to be at least one instance where you will find yourself on the winning side of a match because you stuck to the fundamentals. But anyway, being able to actually chain special attacks from your normals is what's called canceling. It's basically canceling the animation of the previous attack to move into the next. If you're fast enough on it, it'll actually string the combo together, thus doing more damage. One thing you'll have to watch out for is the fact that the larger your combos, the less damage each individual hit will do. And just as with special attacks, you can actually chain together hypers from your normal attacks as well. And just a little bit of advanced tech, if you're fast enough, you could even cancel specials into hypers. Like so. Thus increasing your options as far as offense. Now, some hypers can be canceled from a special. Some can't, basically because of where you are once that hyper hits. So, you could be in midair from a hurricane kick, for example, and cancel into a hyper art. Let's stay right back there. You could even be in midair from a dragon punch and cancel into a hyper art. Sometimes it doesn't always work out because of how far back the opponent's knocked, but you can still do it. Now, not all hyper arts in the game are purely offensive. Some of them actually act as modifiers or act as defensive buffs, for example. Let's take for example Ryu. He was actually given a new hyper art specifically for Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, I should say, that actually modifies all of his specials. So, if you actually perform the command for it, which is down twice, so tap down 2 times, and hit all 3 of the punch buttons, you'll see him actually power up, and he goes into a supercharged state, similar to, let's say, the Kaioken state from Dragon Ball Z. And what that does is it'll actually modify all of his specials and even his hyper arts. So let's say you have normal Hadoken, and you have the unmodified Shinku Hadoken. Initiate Hado Break, like so. Then you have his projectiles doing more damage. And then there's the modified Shinku Hadoken, or the Shin Hadoken. See how that was changed up? Alright, we're coming up on the 25-minute mark, so I should be bringing this to a close. Here's your homework for the day, ladies and gentlemen. pick up the controller, throw in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 or Ultimate Marvel 3, pick one character from the roster that looks good to you, and practice chaining. Practice canceling into specials. Practice your super arts. And if you want to try and go a little bit more advanced, practice super canceling from specials. Take as much time as you need. Basically, take as much time as you need in order to get familiar with your chosen character's special moves. And I mean, at the very least, with just performing the commands. Take the time that you need to familiarize yourself with performing the commands. Get that muscle memory down. If you can go at least 10 times performing the same move, then I think you might actually be ready to move on to the next portion of this course. On to the next Rookie's Field Training Guide for Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So, until then, this is Blazing Ace Nelson. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks to all my new subscribers as well. And also a big shout out to Dark Masamune87 for liking the previous video and for giving me a bit of a reminder to actually keep up with this. So, until then, class dismissed. I'll see you next time.